and thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in studio today are two guests, which I'm sure you recognize. Two of our panelists, Chuck and Marty, are here. Let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their speciality. So, Marty, we'll start with you.
Oh, good. The girls get to go first. I'm Martie Alanya, and I am almost retired, sort of, well, I don't know. That's, I'm a landscaper, and I was a private landscaper pretty much, and I still know a lot of stuff. Digging holes hurts my back, but, I still have a lot of stuff going on up here.
That's where you hire an assistant.
That's right.
Someone else can dig the holes, and you can just kind of say, yes, no, 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 yes, yes, yes.
I have minions.
There you go. There you go. All right.
So,
Yes, I'm Chuck Voigt. I'm retired from the Department of Crop Sciences, formerly known as horticulture.
I worked
As a
there.
vegetable and herb specialist. I worked there for over 27 years, and I've been retired for several years and still seem to be busy. And
Busier, maybe.
well, at some things, yes.
Yes, yes. Excellent. Okay, so we've got two jack-of-all-trades on the set today, and we're going to talk about a whole host of things. Chuck already alluded to his expertise in vegetables, so let's jump in. First, let's talk about the growing season for you with the weather. How did things go out at the farm?
Well, it was a late start. I think it was kind of damp, and it was cold, and it was odd. And so I kind of missed out on those early cool season crops that have that very narrow window in the early spring. And so then when things finally started to happen, I was doing the tail end of some of those things, like I can't go without potatoes, me. I was doing that, but then I was planting tomatoes and peppers almost like the next week. It was all compressed into that early window.
Yeah.
Then almost immediately we went to hot.
Yes.
And
dry.
then a while after hot came dry.
Yeah.
And we skirted right on the edge of disaster the rest of the season up there in Kankakee County. And for some things I was carrying water, especially to get some things established. But it's really not set up where I can even get there with a hose. So it's all based on back labor, and so you had to need it really badly if you were a plant or was survive.
Yeah.
Fortunately, maybe because of the late start, the soil was in great condition and it held moisture super well. I mean, the tilth was good, and I got by with way less rain than I would have expected I could have.
Excellent. Now, did you say, was this the first year that you condensed a little bit?
Yes, if you remember the video we did, I was promising that next year I'm going to be in this footprint here, which is probably like 40 by 80, which to a lot of people would be a huge garden. But if you've done acreage, 40 by 80 is like
Postage stamp.
you can't hardly turn around in it. So I actually managed to stay within that promise to myself, partly because I didn't have a lot of space taken up with those early spring things that I didn't have time for. But we're going to take credit for it because it worked out okay.
Okay. Now let's take a look at this first picture here.
Okay.
Now tell us what we're seeing.
Okay, on the right, the sweet potatoes. If you recall, I had a 100-foot row last year. Why, I don't know. I was able to curb my enthusiasm this year and was around 40 feet, which is probably, in terms of what I can consume within my family group, still is plenty. But and I had some friends who wanted some slips, so I ended up growing 9 varieties, which I had meant to. Well, I lost one because I'd been carrying 10. And so I ended up having like 3 plants each of most of them. And then the 2 that I really wanted, I had more of. So they did well. Certainly not like the once in a lifetime crop in 2021, with the 7-pounders and the.
Yes. I remember that. I think I had a bite of that one, didn't I? Didn't you bring me the purple?
Yeah.
Yes, it was delicious, by the way.
Yeah, and just full of phytonutrients. And then kind of in the center there are the tomatoes in their cages. And at this point, I think we're in September, and we're finally starting to see a little leaf disease, but unlike a lot of the previous years when you get those rainy, humid things going on, leaf disease really stayed away. I had relatively perfect tomatoes well into September. It was, in fact, my sister was bragging to her friend in Oregon, no, Washington, sorry. And so we took some pictures of some of the best ones in the box.
They're pretty.
Yeah,
you look like a proud papa right there.
Well, yes.
They're adorable.
They are.
Right.
They are.
I think that some of the other shots are probably there. That's probably a better, more indicative shot. And those, I mean, nothing terribly special. I've kind of landed on Early Girl and Big Beef.
I was going to say, are those early girls?
The smaller ones are Early Girls, the bigger ones are Big Beef.
Yeah, okay.
Both did exceptionally well this year. For a long time, no cracking at the stem end. Just amazing.
They were lovely, yeah.
And of course, because they weren't overcome with water, the flavor was really concentrated. The best tomatoes I've had maybe since the drought of 1988.
Oh my gosh. A banner year for tomatoes, huh?
Well, I was watering like crazy back then, so that the tomatoes worked out well. I ended up with twice as many pepper plants as I really wanted to have because I didn't find what I wanted at the first place where I went. And then the second place I went had what I wanted. So I ended up with 16 instead of 8. And so we ended up with like bushels of peppers, but we got them dried and parceled out. And we had a great pepper year, great tomato year. Some other things maybe not as wonderful, but.
Okay. We're going to check back in with you in a bit and look at some of your flower photos because those were gorgeous too.
They sure were.
All right, Miss Tree Woman. This is your thing. And everybody knows when Marty starts talking about pruning, listen up. Or she'll threaten you. Let's get through one show without a threat of violence.
Okay, fine, whatever.
So what do we got?
It's this season. Okay, I'm talking about, I've got a picture that we'll look at later of a golden mops chamaecyparis that I pruned of my own because it was a little bit hairy. It was going every which way. And now it's got a bit more of a refined shape to it. So I went around my yard and my neighbor's yard, and I know they love me, so they don't mind if I snipped something off their lilacs. And I wanted to show you, people get crazy about cleaning stuff off in the winter. Oh, we got to cut all that down and get ready for spring. No, you don't. No, you don't. And there are some things you just should not prune in spring, because if you do, you're going to short yourself on the spring bloom. So here, I'm not sure how good a picture we can get on here, but this is a Carlisi viburnum, a little clipping I took off. Now you can see, I'm trying to look and see how they got those little wings on them there? Okay, that's a blossom. When you look inside here, if you can look closely, but we kind of can't. We just can't get close enough this time. But these all have a little pincushiony kind of a look to them. And they've always got those two little wings. And they're gonna bloom. Okay, so this is viburnum. They bloom on the terminal ends of the stick, of the branch.
Twig.
Thank you. Twig's good. Twig's a good word. Yeah, thank you. I'm like, I should know this. Okay, and you see how these other ones, these are not blossoms. These are just going to be leaves right here. Those are just going to be leaves. But the blossoms come, they're a little round guy. They kind of look like a dogwood blossom earlier this year. And that's, if you go out and you're like, well, I'm just going to shape that up. Well, you're going to cut yourself short, and then you'll be calling us and going, how come my bird didn't bloom this year? Because you're an idiot, okay? Watch the show.
All right.
I can almost smell those.
Oh, they're wonderful.
That's spicy.
They are wonderful. My neighbors have farmhouse lilacs on the east side of me, and I've got this Carlisi and a little Miss Kim lilac on the west side of the house, and everybody blooms at one time, and it's just like
when the winds breeze comes through. And
remember that cartoon dog that would float on the
just
smell of food?
Yes.
And his little hands. Yeah, that's what we do. I'm like, oh my God, it's delicious out here. Okay, so we're done with viburnum.
Sorry.
And now we're gonna do this little bitty star magnolia. Same thing. This is a little star magnolia, and these are the blossoms. They're fuzzy, little catkins there. This is a saucer magnolia. So, but they both, you see the similarity. It's just like the little
I thought they were
mommy
the same.
catkin. Well, that's why you attend here, okay? So we
Class is in session.
That's right.
Make a note.
That's right. This is going to be a quiz later. So this is a bud also, and this is a bud, and this, but those are going to be leaves. So the flowers bloom at the end. So if you prune for shape, you're going to lose some of your flowers. I got a couple more, and then we're done with the twiggy things. Okay, this is a Miss Kim lilac. See how tiny these little buds are. I don't know how close we can get, but these are itty bitty. But I'm not sure you can tell, but they have sort of a purplish hue, and they come out 2 at a time. So all of these are going to be flowers, like back away from the stem too. And honest to God, you're never going to make that small anyway. What you should do, if it's too big where it is bite the bullet, dig it up, and move it somewhere where it has room to stretch, because it will not stay small. It won't. And it's advertised as a miniature lilac somewhat. Well, it grows in a ball, and it doesn't grow like an old standard farmhouse lilac with the suckers at the bottom and, you know, taller than it is. Why? It doesn't grow in a vase shape. It grows in a ball. And I defy you to prune it into a tree and leave it like that. Now, these are regular lilacs, very similar, except they're just much, much, much bigger. So, okay, there's the Miss Kim over here, and this is the lilac we're all used to seeing, you know, the farmhouse lilacs. Tall, big panicles of dark purple or almost red or white flowers. This, now let me get this one guy here. This is a faded flower from this lilac, this farmhouse lilac. So even if you have these big lilacs and you're going along and you're like, oh, that's going to be a no, it's not. Nope, nope, that's done. These little round guys at the end of the stems.
So you can get rid of these if you're wanting to shape up.
You certainly can.
Gotcha.
You can cut those off and no one will care. However, if you cut these off, then you're like, well, there's a bare spot on that, because you
cut them all off.
Yeah. So don't do that. There are things, when things bloom in the spring, whether they're trees or shrubs or whatever they are, whatever form they take, don't prune them, anything woody at all. You know, a shrub or, like I said, a tree. Prune those right after they bloom. When the last petal falls, get out there and shape them up, get them off the sidewalk, move them to a better spot.
But not now.
Don't put it off.
Yes, yeah.
Because once the buds start to set up for the next year.
Yeah. These are plants that bloom on old wood. So this is the wood that grew all summer this year. And it puts on these buds for next spring. But if you wait until November to prune that thing up while you're at it, yeah, you're not going to get any flowers. So be sure when, like viburnum, lilac, forsythia, all of these guys, if you want to prune them right after they flower. When that last petal falls, get out there and be sure and do it before July 1st. June 15th is better, but, you know, before July 1st. And then it'll have enough time to grow new wood with blossoms on it that you can't see until next year.
All right. Speaking of flowers, we're going back out to the farm.
Oh, they're fabulous.
How about that?
Yes,
look at this lovely.
That is one of my all-time favorites. That's an Amish coxcomb. You can get that from Seed Savers. I think some other places probably have it. If I'm not mistaken, it came from the Amish community here in Illinois originally, but it got into Seed Savers and they offer it through their catalog. It's a crested type, but the crests tend to stay fairly small, so you don't have like a basketball-sized crest that what do you do with other than be amazed by it. So it makes a much better cutting one. I have a tendency to saw it in flats and then not really thin it out too much, so I have maybe 2, 3, 4 plants in a hill, and so that keeps them even smaller. But it's a really nice one. there's two kinds of cosmos, and I've always called them cosmos. Since Carl Sagan, I think a lot of people call him Cosmos because of his program, but they've always been cosmos to me. The two types, the orange yellow ones that I think are called Klondike types, or at least were back in the day 50 years ago when I was learning plant materials. And then the other ones that we'll see later are the sensation types. 4 o'clocks. I have a wonderful history with these. These are all things that I've grown for years and years. And my aunt they built a new house. Their house burned down. They had built a new house, and she had like a planter bed between the sidewalk and the house. Grew 4 o'clocks there. Well, they seated themselves up against the foundation.
Yeah, they do.
And and so she had 4 o'clocks the rest of her life.
Yes.
And so
That's what
she wasn't really a swearer, but I think she came close to saying bad things about him. But it wasn't because 4 o'clocks are bad. It's just that they do get kind of thick roots that will winter over. You can actually buy roots to start them from some places sometimes.
I had a client who loved 4 o'clocks, and there was a small raised bed right outside of her garage door. I put a little stone wall, and there was I believe there was a tree form hydrangea there, and she said, "When we put in 4 o'clocks," I'm like, "Well, yeah, they're going to reseed themselves like insanely." And she says, "Oh, I know, but I had them when I was a kid, and I loved them." So she's got 4 o'clocks every. She doesn't even
Just
have to
know what you're getting into.
Yeah, she didn't do anything. She cuts off the top ones, and the seeds go. Yeah, I mean they fill in. They're great.
Yeah, and the reason they're called 4 o'clocks is the flowers come out in late afternoon, and then they're pollinated by night flyers like moths, and have a wonderful fragrance.
Yeah.
It's through the night, and if you get out there early in the morning,
You can still
it's a
get
very
away.
distinctive fragrance. It really makes me smile when I get there. Globe amaranth, gomphrena. I was disappointed because my favorites are the purplish ones.
Yeah.
And so I had mostly white and pink ones, but again, we've had these for years. We call them clover straw flowers because as they grow, the bracts on those flowers are already pretty papery and dry.
They
dry very well.
They're great for dry arrangements.
Right.
Excellent.
I had two kinds of this kind of cosmos. This is the older type, the bright lights, which get 4 feet or more tall. The first one we saw was a more dwarf one that's probably under 2 feet. But that same bright lights is more orange and
I see the bicolor in the back.
Yeah, the color range was better on the smaller ones. That's just another shot of those. These are bush balsam. It's a relative of impatiens, so it gets the seed pods that when you touch them, the sides all swiggle back and it shoots the seeds all over the place.
They're dehiscent, boys and girls. Yeah.
Okay.
They
explode in your hand.
Nice.
They're pretty interesting when you're a kid,
And then
especially.
zinnias, I had both the State Fair big ones and then the Lilliputs, the small flowered ones.
Yeah.
And to the right, you can kind of see the nasturtiums. And the story I tell about nasturtiums is it's one of the first 2 things I grew when I was 3 years old. I planted nasturtiums, I planted radishes. I have a vivid memory of coming in with the first radish that I pulled. It wasn't a spectacular looking radish because it was sparkler, the red one with the white tip.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I've never had as good a luck with that as with Cherry Bell and some of the red ones.
Easter eggs, yeah.
But there they are. This is the dwarf one, and somehow I got a package of the vining ones mixed in, because I planted all these flower seeds when I saw that I was going to have this space available, and put them on my plant stand with my things that are outside summering. And over the first night, some critter got in there and dug up each cell, and so I had to replant. And somewhere along the line, I got some long ones, but they don't seem to show in this picture. But I got the ones that go 6 or more feet long.
But the stew was good that you made out of the perpetrator. Wait, I'm being threatening again, aren't I? I'm sorry.
Yes, you promised.
And this is Cleome, spider flower. The packet that I had this year was mostly purples, although there was one pink one and a couple of white ones.
They're lovely.
Now, how tall does that get?
that gets taller than me eventually.
Really?
You know, it starts flowering, and then you can see it starts down at the bottom, and it just keeps flowering up at the tip until it freezes. And then you get nice seed pods at the bottom that you can kind of pull off, and you get whole bunches of seeds.
They're pretty.
There's one.
And they just look like the queen of the garden, you know.
Very pretty.
That crown-like flower.
Here we are.
up
This
high.
is. I was renewing the seed of. I have 2 heirloom broomcorns. This is the Hungarian red.
I like it.
I got these originally from a lady in Essex, Illinois. She was Mrs. Louis, I think Georgos, but it could be Georgos, I'm not sure. But they had been back to visit Mr. Georgos' brother in Hungary, and he gave him the seed of a red and a black broomcorn. Nice. And so I've been keeping them separate, and
I wanted to show the close-up shot
yes,
because that's really pretty.
There it is.
It's beautiful.
It's very ornamental, and you know, if Diane came up with if you break that into smaller pieces and put it in like a tie it together somehow, you can use it in arrangements a lot better than using that whole thing in a flower arrangement.
Yeah, or one single. They're a little too floppy.
Yeah, if you're going to use it in an arrangement, it kind of needs to be, you know, half as big as the house and like an umbrella stand more than a flower pot.
We've got about 5 minutes left, and speaking of arrangements, I want to jump to some pictures that Martie sent really quickly.
This was my Golden Mops Chamaecyparis. They tend to be like 4 feet tall and as wide at maturity, but they grow pretty slowly. So this one has not been pruned for 2 years. I've had kind of a tough 2 years the last couple. So the garden just did what it wanted to. So that little foof noodle there at the top, that had to come off. So,
all right, so here's after the haircut.
You know, it's like you pull your hat off when you're wearing a stocking cap and whoop, yeah, okay, we got to get rid of that. Okay, so it got a little prune in there, and
from that,
I have these 2 cool wrought iron planters that I inherited. My sister's mother-in-law had them, and then she passed away, and my mom wound up with them. And then when my mom moved out of where she could use them, I thought my sister would want them because they were her mother. Yeah, and they came to me, and I love them. I love the way they look on my wooden steps. Those are painted white wrought iron, and they're plenty big enough to slip a very large pot down inside of, and you just don't even see them. They're excellent. So those clippings went in the pot. I always do this in the fall and winter. And then the pink stuff in the middle is sedum. And then there's also, can you zoom it all on that? There you go. There's some blue spruce down at the bottom right there. And then up higher to the left a little, there's some dry hydrangea. I had some panicum grass, and I do like that. I cut a clump off. You got to have like, you know, so you can stick it down in there, otherwise it'll just go all over.
That broomcorn would look pretty in that arrangement.
Really would.
You guys should have worked this out ahead of the recording.
Did he bring some
I have a little extra in the fan. I have a little extra in the van if you want to load up.
Chuck travels with broomcorn. I love it. I love it. I love it. Very pretty. And you said you were going to add some ornaments to that and just kind of.
Yeah, those are pretty. Like this is a pot that's probably 14 inches across. You know, at least a foot, probably a little bit more. So round, and I just started jamming stuff in there, and usually those are annual pots. This year I didn't get them planted, so they're just sitting there in their dirt, but they're not frozen, so I could stab stuff in there.
Let's get one question
and then ornaments in there, awesome. They look really great. I can take those out, and those things that I chose dry well, and the evergreen stays well, so those are good until spring. You know, I did that now, and those are great until April.
And you'll just leave them. Now, did you say, I checked out for a second, do you water them? Do you water the arrangements? Do you mist them? Do you?
No.
Because Ella made one last year for my porch, and she said to go ahead and just kind of mist it or water it a little bit, just to kind of.
Those are all things that most people would just deadhead. I chose those things, like the grass, that came like off the last foot or foot and a half. And then the sedum, I took that out because it had already been crushed. I think the dog ran through it chasing a rabbit. But ordinarily, I leave all that stuff up because it's good for the crown of the plants. It's good for beneficial insects to overwinter in. And you can cut that down in the spring. You're dying to get out there anyway.
Yes.
Okay? Just leave that up. And it's so much better for the crown of your plants. It's so much better for beneficials that you're going to wish you had harbored, because the enemy is ever vigilant.
Ooh.
And you got a whole army of helpers out in your garden if you just feed them a little bit. Give them a couple of tents.
Real quick, we've got 1 minute left. Let's see if we can get this answered in 1 minute. This is a question about a weed in the garden, and we've got a photo. The past couple of years, I've had this weed growing in my weed/vine in my rock garden. I pull them out, they come back. This person needs help up in Tinley Park. So what do you think this is, and what is the best course of action quickly?
I think it's a bindweed.
Seems reasonable.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they get going in nurseries and actually get sold with plants, which is a terrible thing.
Yes, it is.
And it's hard to control because it has very nice fleshy roots that are deep. I don't know if you can isolate it somehow and maybe do a spot treatment on its foliage so it doesn't get on the plant that it's trying to grow on. You might be able to get enough down there with multiple applications to eventually discourage it, but it's a tough
They're in for a fight,
one.
Huh? Okay.
It'll clamber 4 or 5 feet tall and just inundate everything.
Yikes. Okay.
It climbed up over my bird feeders.
I like to usually end on a good note, but this is what we got this time. So hopefully you can take care of that weed. Thanks to Chuck and Marty for coming in, and thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good night.